It's boycott time, isn't it? Isn't it? Boycott time? Is that what we're calling it?
In the House of Representatives.
Mm-hmm.
So the MPs will not go to the House unless the government rescinds the suspension, but I don't see how they can do that.
You remember yesterday I'd asked you, Edison, if the Parliament or the opposition can operate without the opposition leader.
They can.
And Mr. Ghani is saying here that they can't, or somebody crossed the floor in 1971 and 1972. So they can't operate without a political opposition leader.
Yes, it's quite possible. According to this report here, Dr. Ghani, noted political scientist, said back in 1971, the PNM won all 36 seats in the House, and there was no opposition leader. And then when Roy Richardson crossed the floor, yes, he became the opposition leader. So he was the only opposing force. And that's why people have been asking whether Jack Warner would now become the opposition leader. So
for some people that'd be a horror.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I do believe we have Martin George on the line, noted attorney at law. Good morning to you, Martin George.
Yeah, hi, good morning to you, Jesse. And
morning,
good
Mr. George.
To your listeners.
Yes.
And good morning, Edison.
Yes, Martin George, just very quickly, many people are wondering as to the legality of what took place in Parliament with the suspension of Dr. Rowley just 6 weeks away from the actual proroguing of Parliament, and the fact that his constituents won't have any representation in the Parliament, and whether government can do this at all.
Well, separate and apart from the question of the legality, I think one has to look at the question of the practicality or sensibility of such a move. And I think that when the government looks at it from a long-term perspective, I think this is going to be cast in a similar mold as the vanilla outburst, because really this doesn't appear to be a well thought out strategy. And I say that with the greatest of respect. I'm not a politician, I'm not a political strategist, but I'm just speaking as a layperson and, a citizen. And it doesn't appear that the population is going to be too enthused with this move, because regardless of what the circumstances are, there are a few things that are patent and very obvious and very clear. The police investigation into the email gate is still ongoing. So it appears, I would think, premature to seek to have a motion of censure against anyone in relation to that email gate issue when there has not been official closure on the matter by the police service at all. The Integrity Commission, their investigation is still also not completed. So therefore it appears, and when one listened to the contributions in the Parliament where persons are going into details of the matter, it just appeared to me to be an unnecessary foray into the facts and evidence of matters that are still under active consideration by two very powerful bodies, the police service and the Integrity Commission. So I don't know why anyone would want to do that, because it's a rush to judgment and it's a premature, dabbling and meddling into the facts and issues when we have had no official pronouncement yet on these issues from the official organs of state which are charged with that responsibility.
Martin
wonders what was the purpose and reason for so doing.
Martin George, we spoke with the communications minister, Senator Vasan Bharat, yesterday, and he underscored the point that yes, government, knows that it has a majority and it would have been able to carry its motion anyway. But the important thing was that they needed to do what they did because Dr. Rowley brought serious allegations, and it appears now, it seems, without foundation. against not just the Attorney General, but also the Prime Minister, allegations that would have involved the murder of a journalist, allegations that involved all manner of impropriety as well, including espionage in the DPP's office. He said so as a result of that, they could not leave it lying down, and they had to act, and they had to act in a way that would send a clear message.
Well, if it is that's what the Minister of Communications is saying, then maybe it is that the government is privy to information that the general public doesn't have. So if it is that they have reached a conclusion on the matter, you understand what I'm saying, Jesse and Edison? It may be at the end of the day that the Integrity Commission may come out and say exactly what the government said, and the police service may come out and say exactly what they said, that there was absolutely no foundation, no basis, whatever. But to my mind, it appears premature, it appears improper, and I say this, with the greatest of hesitation. But the point is, it just does not seem proper that while these matters are still under active investigation and consideration, that you would have the government basically making pronouncements on the determination of these issues. That is the concern I have. And I mean, as I say, I have this concern as a citizen. I also have this concern even sitting as a member of the Police Service Commission, because one has to wonder, is it some trespass on the mandate and jurisdiction of the police service that you would come out and make these basically pronouncements and determinations on the matter? Those are the aspects of the issue that trouble me more than anything else, because I think we have to be careful. And then you look at what has been happening in the Parliament the last few weeks. The people's business is not really being done. There's no serious legislation that is being debated in that respect. All that you are seeing is politicking and basically campaigning going on in the Parliament. That disturbs me tremendously.
What weight would you give, Mr. George, to the verifications coming from the State Department in the U.S. and also Google International, where they proclaim that the emails are fake?
Well, Edison, unfortunately, I am not a police officer. I am not the one charged with the responsibility for heading that investigation. So I would not be so presumptuous to try to make any pronouncement on the matter. I am not apprised of all the facts and information that the police service has, and that's exactly my point. As I say, unless it is that the government has some inside line into all that is going on within the police service and within the Integrity Commission, and they already know the results of these investigations. Because, you see, here's the difficulty. This has the potential to taint any result which comes out now from these investigations, because persons could say, and I think quite rightly so, that, look, maybe there's some element of, tampering with the results or the findings, because you have basically what I think is really a premature pronouncement on the issue in the Parliament. And I'm deeply troubled by the way this has unfolded, and I'm not sure there was a need for this. I mean, you heard the calls on the political platform where the government was saying, look, speed up the investigation, bring it to a conclusion. Okay, fine. That's great. So therefore, in other words, they recognized that the investigation was not yet completed. So then I don't understand the logical jump that you can make. In fact, it doesn't appear logical at all that you could then jump from that, calling on the authorities to, hurry up with their decision, and then instead you now rush ahead and you give your decision basically on the issue, and then you act on it further. It just appears to be a total mess and a wholly unnecessary step by the government, when we really should be seeking, doing the legislation that's doing the business of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. This is not what the Parliament is for. I am very, very dissatisfied, and I'm sorry to say, with the functioning of our Parliament within the last few weeks. That's not the way our Parliament should be functioning. We've seen it sink to levels of, debasement that it's just mind-boggling and numbing.
You're using very, very strong language there, Martin George. Very harsh indictments.
I'm usually very, very guarded and always very reserved in my comments, but I think that, at some point, people have to stand up. You see, the thing is, what happens is that if good people do not stand up and say things and speak out, then you will have this tide of behavior that is not in the best interest of the nation continuing.
So, Mr. George, what do you think will be the interpretation of the political circus, as it were, on the Caribbean scene and the international scene, seeing that we are leaders in our region and in this Western Hemisphere?
Well, the thing is, I'm not sure that we can necessarily draw conclusions at this point, in terms of the impact regionally or internationally, because I think people may just see it as part of the silly season of elections. But you see, we who live here, we who have to work and function in this space, and we who understand that there is life after elections 2015, where we all have to live together, work together, regardless of your political persuasion. But the thing is, when they ratchet up this political antagonism to the level where basically the country is stymied for the last few months, we've not been moving forward. We've just been locked in this tit for tat and this, antagonism where nobody's progressing. All they're doing is pulling each other down. And that doesn't appear to me to be what we should allow our politicians to continue doing in our political space and in the nation's highest forum, which is the parliament.
A little puzzle was going through my mind, Mr. George, in that Dr. Rowley is suspended from the House as opposition leader and so on. Do you think this might possibly affect the leaders' debate? If the leader is no longer a leader, I'm looking at the legal implications. Is he a leader or is he not a leader?
Well, the point is, it may be a bit premature at this stage to speculate on that, because we don't know what is likely to happen in terms of the fallout from this action. There may be either reversal of the decision. I'm not quite sure, but the point is, I would think that in those circumstances, Dr. Rowley is still the leader of the party, and I think when they said leader, I didn't think that it was leader of the opposition. So I think there's a big difference. So once he's still the leader of the party and the party is contesting the elections, then I think that there's no question as to whether he would be still eligible to participate in the debate. However, on that note, and I say this again with the greatest of respect and deference to the Trinidad and Tobago Debates Commission, I am not sure that I support or am convinced by their arguments to suggest that the leaders' debate should be limited to Dr. Rowley and the Prime Minister alone. I think that is quite a disservice to the country for them to take that decision. When one tries to follow the logic upon which they, premise that decision, it appears flawed, it appears factually inaccurate, and I'm not sure that there's any moral or social justification. I think the population ought to hear from the leaders of the major political parties. So therefore, that means Mr. Jack Warner ought to be given a hearing. Mr. David Abdullah ought to be given a hearing. So the thing is, when one looked at what happened in the UK, you had 7 candidates there, all in, and they had it was a slugfest. They all, had their say. And the point is, the population was able to hear the views and, see the questions put to all the various leaders. And
but how would you define a major political party in our context?
Well, the point is they have used a formulation whereby they said that if you have at least, I think they said 12.5
yes.
of, popularity in an opinion poll. So I guess they would use some sort of formulation that way. But the point is, still, even with that, they then decided, notwithstanding that it would be limited only to the leader of the People's Partnership and the leader of the PNM. And I don't think that's, acceptable at all for the population.
Because Mr. Jack is the only MP in his party.
Yes, but it doesn't matter, Edison. It doesn't matter that he may be the only MP, because from what he has said in the press, he says that he intends to have his party contest at least 23 constituencies. So that's why I said the logic of the Trinidad and Tobago Debates Commission appears to be factually flawed, because at one point they said that a party must be contesting at least 21 seats to be eligible. So if Mr. Warner's party is, according to what he says, contesting 23 seats, then it would seem, ipso facto that he should be eligible. So I'm not sure. And you see, I'll tell you, the purpose of it is to discuss ideas, to hear the plans, to test these persons who are aspiring for high political office, to have them, come to the population and, level with them, explain their ideas and be tested in that forum. And therefore, we ought to have a wider pool, I would think, to choose from in terms of hearing ideas, even just for that purpose.
You had used the word rush earlier on, Mr. Martin George, as far as that debate in the House, which led to the suspension of Dr. Rowley. But 2013, and now it's 2015, you would consider it a rush by the government to impugn and suspend Dr. Rowley?
Well, Edison, it's obviously a rush if there's no official determination by the bodies charged with that responsibility. So in other words, as I said, they were quite correct on the political platform to call on these bodies to complete the investigations. They were quite correct in that regard. And that's where the time lag would be of significance, because you can then say, well, look, since 2013, these things have been hanging around. We are calling upon you to speed up your conclusion. That's very correct. Where you then fall off the wagon, as I see it, and I say this again with the greatest of deference, I'm not a politician, I'm not a political strategist, so therefore they may know things that I don't know, and I defer to their greater wisdom and greater logic at all times. But where it just doesn't seem to make sense to me is that you do that, and then in the next breath, you then go and you make your own pronouncements on these matters and say, therefore, we find someone, worthy of being suspended from the parliament as a result. That's where the rush comes in, Edison.
This is Sky 99.5 FM. You're inside the Breakfast Roundtable, and we're bringing you an update on a major news story today. That update is Compliments Republic Bank. We've got a major newscast coming your way at the top of the hour, which is some 18 minutes away. Martin George, you're using pretty strong language this morning in your assessment of what has taken place within the last 48 hours or so. You've also...
doing so, Jesse, again, with the caveat that I am not a politician or political strategist, so maybe there's a greater wisdom and greater knowledge and greater logic that they are applying. So I'm always very respectful. So it may be that they know things that the ordinary citizens don't. But I must be able to comment based on the level of what I know and what I have before me.
Now you're speaking as an ordinary citizen in some respects. For the ordinary citizen who does not have the kind of legal training that you do, all of this can be extremely confusing and would probably make it very difficult for them, or perhaps even very easy for them to make up their minds come election day. What say you?
Well, the thing is, I think at the end of the day, if one is not able to go into all the legal niceties and ramifications of the matter as it relates to May's parliamentary practice and the standing orders and what ought to be done and the procedure that should be followed, because I heard Mr. Al-Rawi speaking, in terms of things that he felt ought to have been done. I'm not sure necessarily if, it's all accurate. I would have to do some further research to be able to give a detailed analysis of what he said. But the point is, I think the layperson would basically take from this that, look, the leaders are in some fight or war, and it's, one side against the other, and all you would have really, I think, is a further polarization of the society in terms of emotions. So I think that's all that you are really doing. So I don't see anything good coming out of it except a hardening of the core and base positions. In other words, this type of action is never going to appeal to undecided third, fourth, or